we'll kick us off. I'm going to actually let Dr. Cash kick us off right here. And it's 6 o'clock on the money. So whenever you're ready, Dr. Cash.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Well, hey, everybody, welcome back. I just want to say I'm really excited that we're about to have not just you, but also our students back in the building, more than just on Testing Tuesdays. But just wanted to welcome everybody back. I hope you had a restful and an enjoyable summer. I just wanted to say briefly before we move on to the main reason that you're here this evening, we had a really good leadership summit yesterday with our principals and with the district office. And one of the things that I had asked for the principals to do early in the morning was to take their cell phone out and to go to your photo app. And so go ahead and do that now. Take out your cell phone. Everybody look at your cell phone. I know you got it right there in your lap. Some of you may be texting on it right now. Go to your photo app. And I just want you to look through your photos. Look at your most recent photos, maybe the photos that you've taken this summer. And I want you to realize something, that all of those photos that you've taken, or I should say most of those photos that we take and that we hold on to, we take those photos because they're capturing a moment. It's a defining moment for us, and it's something that we don't want to forget. I hope that the photos that are in your photo app are pictures that reflect fond memories. Maybe they're a trip that you took this summer, or maybe it was a memory of a child's birthday or something that you got to do that you just wanted to make sure, this is so incredible, I have got to capture this. And so I started off with this conversation with the principals yesterday because we really want the first day that our kids come back into our buildings, especially after having this 2-month break, and for some of our students it may be the first time to come into our buildings, we want it to be a defining moment for them. And defining moments are going to, I should say this, it will definitely be a defining moment. We want it to be a positively defining moment. And we want each of our students to be able to leave school that first day knowing, I belong here, the work that I'm doing matters, and I matter to the people that are here. So much so that when they come into your building, they may be thinking, hang on just a second, I've got to take out my phone and I've got to take a selfie, or I've got to take a picture of this. This is incredible. This is not like most schools. This is not how it usually goes. And I think that oftentimes with really all of us, not just our students, I think a lot of times when we have transitions in life, if it lacks a defining moment in a positive way, that experience can just be bland and formless. And a lot of times we feel anxiety because we don't know how to act. And I think that that's certainly true for our students, that they feel that anxiousness, that the normal expectation of what was going to happen for a high school student, for some reason, that got short-circuited. And so oftentimes they don't know how they're supposed to feel in that moment. Should they feel anxiety? Should they feel failure? Should they feel like they should be embarrassed? We want to make sure that we have addressed all of that on night one and make sure that that first night is unforgettable. And so I'm encouraging you to establish an unforgettable atmosphere, starting, I mean, even as we've been going through Testing Tuesdays, but certainly when your kids are coming back into your building in August, to create that environment that they know that they matter and there's purpose in them being physically in your building and making progress. So again, just really excited. Wish I could see all of your faces in person, but excited to kick this off. And Rod Metcalf, I'm now going to turn the floor to you.
Thank you, Dr. Cash. Good evening, Mountain Ed staff. It's good to be with you for another school year. Several years ago, we started a program called Trailblazers. Chattooga, Cherokee, Dawson, Forsyth, Hall, Habersham, Lumpkin, Stevens, and the white campuses have all had a Trailblazers program on their campus. We've also had a couple additional campuses express interest for this next school year. Our Trailblazers students have had a tremendous success in learning more about problem-solving skills, emotion regulation, communication, and many other important skills that will help them in their personal, academic, work, and community relationships. The lessons our students are learning in Trailblazers are lessons that everyone would benefit from learning. And many young adults are craving these skills to help them navigate today's world. For example, at the University of Washington, they have created a course that teaches these skills to undergraduates. It's an elective course, and over 1,500 students each semester are signing up for the course. Again, just one example of how today's young adults are desperately seeking new ways to help them navigate the ever-changing world in which they live. Here's some of the things that Mountain Education students have shared during their Trailblazers groups. One student said, I'm learning how to center my thoughts and weigh my options. It's extremely helpful because I struggle with my thoughts and controlling them. Another shared, if I mess something up, I don't need to say I'm dumb, but maybe it's just that I need more practice. Yet another shared, I got frustrated with my brother the other day, and instead of lashing out, I regulated my emotions and really talked to him when I was ready. Still another shared, when a coworker was being aggressive and rude to me, I was scared, but I chose to stick up for myself in a calm, assertive, and respectful manner. I used my wise mind. Yet another shares, I learned when speaking to others, I can use Dear Man, which is a skill they use, to ask for help or work through the conversation confidently. I can practice managing strong emotions to control myself. The curriculum that we use for our Trailblazers group is called DBT Skills in Schools Steps A. Tonight, we're privileged to have one of the co-creators of DBT Steps A, Dr. Elizabeth Dexter-Mazza, share with us more about the DBT Steps A. Dr. Liz and her staff have been an incredible support to Mountain Education and our Trailblazers program. Dr. Liz, welcome back to Mountain Education, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much. This is like one of the most exciting trainings I've been looking forward to, just because we've been working with Mountain Ed and the development of the Trailblazers program for so long that it's exciting to hear how the students are responding to it and how the schools, and that more of your schools want to bring it to you all this year. Just to give you a really brief little background on me, because I know I don't have a lot of time with you all today, is I am a clinical psychologist by training, and I've been both providing dialectical behavior therapy, comprehensive outpatient treatment, and training mental health professionals on how to provide comprehensive DBT treatment, which is the foundation of where the DBT Steps A curriculum came from, for over 25 years. But really, in the last 15 years, I've shifted all of my work from doing one-on-one clinical work and clinical training to working with schools and developing this curriculum for adolescents in middle school and high school. And now later this year, we'll have an elementary school curriculum coming out about how do we teach these critical life skills to all students as part of their general education. And as Rod said, the fact that we have university students, young adults, 18 to 21 years old, signing up voluntarily for this elective class really speaks to our mission and the importance of how kids are recognizing that these are the foundational skills I need to go out into the world, at my jobs, in my relationships, in connection with people, to truly be successful, and captures the way we can educate the whole child. So I'm really excited to be here with you all today. Hopefully many of you watched the brief introductory video I made for you earlier in the summer to give you some background about the DBT Steps A curriculum. Today, I'm going to talk about how do we create a supportive environment. So like Dr. Cash said, when those students show up, they feel present, they feel it's momentous and a memorable day. And how do we use validation for that? And then later in the fall, I'll spend some more time with you and we'll talk through a few of the skills and how you can really introduce it. And so, like I said, just really excited to be here with all of you. If I seem a little clunky in like going through my presentation, I have to tell you it's because we're on Google Meet. And this is probably the first time I've ever presented using Google Meet. I can tell you how to use Zoom inside and out. But I know you all are Google Meet folks, and so I was trying to put it into this platform. So if I look clunky in my presenting, that's why, because I think I have it all figured out, but if I run up to anything, I'll let you know. So I have about 30 minutes to talk about strategic validation and why it's so important today. And the way I'm going to model this is as we go through. First, we're going to just talk briefly with a little bit background about what's called the biosocial theory of emotion dysregulation and how it applies to me and my students. And just to give you mostly really what I want you to know about this as we go through is that if we can understand our students better, if we have an understanding of a little bit about their biology, how did they come to be the way they are, and the environment that they exist in, whether it's a validating or invalidating environment, And really then what we're going to focus on for ourselves is what is an invalidating environment and what can we do at Mountain Ed to create a more validating environment, because the more validating and supportive we are, the more able our students will be able to regulate their emotions, whether in school or outside. Because every time we validate a student strategically and effectively, we are modeling self-validation for them. If we can accurately and effectively validate, we will then also teach them how to self-validate. And that's what they're going to need when they're out in the world, outside of our supportive environment. And that's what I'm going to go through with you all today. And so what I really want you to think about, just kind of briefly, especially as I'm going through this biosocial and the different sides of it, is one, I want you to bring into mind one or two of the students you've worked with in the past that you think are more emotionally dysregulated than others. Or maybe you bring into mind a student that you've had some conflict with, that maybe you've been frustrated with a lot lately, or have felt burnt out by your giving and they don't see them doing as much work in the past. Because one of the ways, understanding a little bit around theory before we jump into validation, can be really helpful, is that it can decrease our burnout. It can help us to become less dysregulated and more understanding, and therefore more able to validate our students' position. So just take a brief moment and bring into mind one or two of your students. I use this model all the time when I get frustrated, when I get dysregulated, or I start feeling burnt out or want to give up on a student or a client or somebody in my life. I come back to how can they be any different than they are, given their biology and given their environment. So I want you to be able to use this that way as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is when we think about emotion dysregulation, it's that we want to create a blameless model. It's not just the student's difficulty and who they are that leads to them being emotionally dysregulated. Partly, it is how they're biologically hardwired. Sometimes we have people who are just more emotionally sensitive than others. Like I am somebody who's more sensitive and reactive than other people. I consider myself like one of those people who like cries at commercials. Especially like my favorite one is like that old Folgers commercial when like the son would come home from after being deployed and he'd be in the house and everybody smells the coffee and they're like, oh, you're home. Right. And they're all excited. Like that tears me up every time. I am somebody who's just more emotionally sensitive. I feel them faster and more intensely at times. And so think about that for a moment. Does that happen to your student? Do they feel more intense? Or sometimes one of the ways that we sometimes describe it is like, is your student like a lion cub in a family of house cats? Maybe they're just biologically hardwired a little bit differently than other people in their home. Like I'm the youngest of 4 kids with the same 2 parents. And I am one sister and I, we are more sensitive, emotionally sensitive and reactionary. Whereas my other 2 siblings are like the most calm, even-keeled people. My brother is a retired air traffic controller from Newark Airport in New Jersey. You know that airport that's having all those problems now for understaffing? Like he was there for many years, but he's the guy you wanted there because he was just really even-keeled. Me, I don't think I would be the best person to be working all of those planes on the ground and in the air at the same time. I'm just a little bit more emotionally reactive on that. So we're thinking about how somebody is biologically hardwired. If their emotions come up and react faster, and I'll come back to the other side of the invalidating environment in a minute, what can happen for them is that when emotions go up really fast, our prefrontal cortex shuts down. And our prefrontal cortex is the part of our brain that's responsible for executive functioning tasks, for decision-making, for rational thinking, for logic. And when our emotion mind, our limbic system gets activated and takes over, right, we're not able to think logically or do effective problem solving. We say no new learning can happen. Distorted thoughts can occur. Can you think of a moment when that's ever happened with one of your students? When you're interacting with them, you can see that they're getting emotionally frustrated, more dysregulated, now getting angry, and they just can't think straight. You're like, no, what you're saying doesn't make sense. here's what's going to happen. And they're like, no, it's just going to be this way. And like they seem like they're really stuck. That's emotion dysregulation, right? That's when their prefrontal cortex is shut down. And it's just like their emotions are driving the bus. Fortunately, the way to get that prefrontal cortex back online, the first step is through validation. Either validation from somebody on the outside or self-validation for themselves. And then we're going to teach them to how to use the mindfulness skills they're learning in their Trailblazers program. And that's going to help them refocus their attention, decrease the use of non-judgmental thoughts that are probably fueling the intensity of those emotions, and start engaging in more effective and problem-solving behaviors and activating all their other Trailblazer skills. But the first step I want to come back to in helping them get both parts of that brain, the prefrontal cortex and their limbic system, which is what we call wise mind, when they get them both working together, step one is validation. And that's what we're going to talk about mostly today. But I really want you to hear that is that the first step to get that prefrontal cortex back online is validation. All right. What else can exacerbate and set off some of that emotion dysregulation for them is the presence of an invalidating environment. And that's where we're going to talk about what that looks like. But it's that transactional, repeated transaction back and forth between the individual with an environment that's more invalidating that leads to more pervasive emotion dysregulation over time. All right. Can you think about, just take a moment with the students that you were just thinking about, write down any notes. Can you write, where have you seen examples of where they get really emotionally dysregulated? And when you try to reason or talk through with them or present the logical piece, that it works? Or have you gotten stuck because their prefrontal cortex is offline? Does that sound familiar? Write that down next to the names of those students. And it's hard that I can't see all of you and kind of get your interaction, but I hope you're thinking through this with them. So let's talk about the invalidating environment and what I mean by invalidating environment here. When I'm talking about the invalidating environment, it's the environment that can lead to, let's see, where am I? That's not what I'm looking for. There we go. It's an environment that's not just in school. It's not just you. Our kids live in so many different, I think of it like concentric circles in the environment, from home to community to school to work environments, and then just the universal internet, social media, society, political world we're in. Those are all part of our students' environments. So it's no one piece of it. And that's part of why we can call it a blameless model, because we never know which part of the environment they're engaging in with at any given time is the invalidating piece of that. And so as we think about it, there's three general characteristics of invalidation that can show up. And I want to just kind of walk through briefly these three characteristics so that you all get to be aware of it, so you can notice it and pay attention. Like, do I do things like this? Or do I see this happening in school? And recognize that this is where I have to kick in with more validation. So the first thing I want you to look for is like, does the environment, whether it's our school environment or when I'm talking to the student, they tell me about their environment, does it indiscriminately reject their communication of private experiences and self-generated behaviors? This is basically when the environment tells the person that what you're thinking, feeling, doing doesn't make sense. You shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't think that way. It's wrong. It's inaccurate. Okay. And so, you know, it's like if you say to somebody like, oh, I'm so hungry, and they say, you can't be hungry. You just ate an hour ago. Which sometimes I have two teenage boys, and that thought goes through my mind quite often at times. But if I say that to them, you can't be hungry, you're not hungry, that's invalidation. That's telling them, don't trust those hunger pangs, that growling in your stomach, it's wrong. And over time, what happens when somebody's told, like, you shouldn't feel that way, don't be sad about this, it's no big deal, right? You shouldn't worry about that. You'll be fine. You know, you always figure it out. Nobody's going to be upset with you. Don't get sad. Don't get worried. Don't be angry. When we tell them that repeatedly, over time, what happens is they stop trusting themselves, right? And it can lead to what we call, I'll just jump over here for a minute, self-invalidation. When the student doesn't trust themselves and they start looking to the environment to tell them, what should I be thinking, feeling, or doing? All right. So we want to pay attention to that. So you have a student who's regularly asking, like, well, what do you think I should do? How would you feel in this situation? Right. Pay attention to that because they may be in a place of self-invalidation. Right. So like an example is here, and it's like, you know, student says, I don't feel well. And the adult or other person responds with, you're fine. It's probably just nerves. Don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. You'll get through it. It seems like encouragement, and it can be invalidation. The second type of invalidation is when the environment ignores or punishes low-level emotional displays and then intermittently or reinforces emotion escalation. I call this like the go big or go home model. It's like when basically the student says, like, I need help. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Can't figure this out. And somebody says, well, just read the directions. It's right there. You'll figure it out. And then the kid might say a few minutes later, like, I still don't really understand what we're doing. Or like, well, everybody else has got it figured out. That you're just not reading the directions. Go back and read the directions. And then a few minutes later go by, all of a sudden the student's like, oh, I hate this. I'm not doing this anymore. And then help moves in. All right, let me sit down with you together. Let's read through the directions. What does it say? Right? It's this idea that like the student asked for help a couple of times effectively, and they didn't get it. However, when they're like scream or frustrated, say like, I'm not doing this, show a big emotion, the environment moves in. I see this happening with friends who try to like make people feel better. Like, it's no big deal that you just broke up with somebody. Like, it's fine. Or like, you'll get another job, or you'll make the team next time. Just got to keep practicing. It's no big deal. Like, let's go out. Let's go do something. Let's go distract ourselves. And they're all like just trying to make the person feel better. However, the person's feeling worse and worse and worse. And then they just kind of engage in some big problematic behavior, or they have an emotional outburst, and then everybody stops and moves in and supports. We want to make sure that we're communicating and reinforcing the communication of those low-level emotions, like effective communication, like, I'm confused, I'm not sure what to do. And they say that, and that they get help, that maybe this teacher really wants them to go read the directions, and yes, I know you can figure it out. The way to shift something like that from invalidating to validating is saying, I get it. Spend a few more minutes reading the directions. I'm pretty sure you can figure this out, and I'll come check on you in 5 minutes. And then follow up. Say, how's it going? Did you figure it out? Do you need more help? That's one way we can shift that invalidation to validation. And then the last characteristic of invalidation, which I see happen so often, and it seems like a small one, and it's this idea that when we oversimplify, we make it sound too easy, the ease of problem solving and meeting goals. This means, like, I think of this as Nike was brilliant in their multi-billion-dollar marketing campaign of just do it. And it was a complete lie. None of those athletes, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, any of the great athletes that were in that commercial campaign, none of them just did it. They all worked so hard, day in and day out, practicing from morning till night with teams of trainers and coaches, and then eventually managers and agents and nutritionists, all those people helping them to become the GOATs as they walk through this. None of them just did anything. However, we say things like this to our kids all the time, our students, of like, just focus, just sit still, just pay attention, just stop looking at your phone, just go talk to the teacher, go talk to the customer. All the justs. I think of just as a 4-letter word for invalidation. because we are oversimplifying it, making it sound easier than it actually is. So we want to shift that as paying attention to that. How often do we tell them to just do something, which in and of itself can be a invalidating word? And what happens as a result, like I said, this go big or go home, when we first like tell the kids, like, you know, that when we're reinforcing that escalated behavior, what happens in our students is, or anybody else in our lives, is they'll kind of shut down, that they go from either showing no emotion at all or showing big emotion. It's like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. I'm not fine. It's big, huge emotion on that. And you're like, ooh, what happened? You said you were fine and now you're not. Sometimes we call that apparent competence. They appear like they're competent, that they're getting through it, but they're struggling underneath, and then they blow up. So think about that. Does that happen for your students at all? That they're like, I'm fine, I don't need any help. And then all of a sudden it's like major meltdown. We want to pay attention to that because that's some invalidation. And then the other part that happens with this just do it type of validation is that it shuts down problem solving. Like, oh, well, if I should just be able to do it and now I can't do it, then I guess maybe I'll never be able to do it, or I'm just not good at that, right? And it stops problem solving. It can get kids set in what we call a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, that if I'm not able to just do it, then I'll never be able to do it. Right? And so we want to really look for that, right? Is it oversimplifying? Is it shutting down their problem solving when we give them these, present their environments, present these types of invalidation to them? Hopefully that makes sense there. I'm trying to see, I can't really see if any questions are popping up at all in the chat. I don't see any, but feel free if somebody else in that other link you have sees questions and want to just pause me or just unmute yourselves and ask questions, you all can for sure. Because now we're going to start talking about, Taylor, do you have?
Liz, I was just going to update you that I did just check the document and I don't see any questions at this time. But
Okay.
folks at the campus, please feel free to jump in on that document and ask any questions as any come up. You can ask your tech or your campus principal to type in the question for you if you have one.
Excellent. Great. All right. So let's talk about, what do we do if we want to create a more validating environment? So one, we're going to do like what is happening in the Trailblazers programs already, teach skills. We're teaching the DBT step-safe skills to our students. And now we're also going to do what we're doing here today, is like, how do we start structuring the environment, right? How do we start teaching you all who may not be teaching the Trailblazers class, but are in the schools, and how do we start teaching you all some skills so that you can be able to coach your students in them, talk about them, recognize them when they're talking about them. And then today, how do we teach validation? How can you start off by creating a more validating environment with your students? So let's talk about, first and foremost, what do we want you to do? What do we want you to validate? And what is validation? Validation basically is telling or communicating to the person, verbally or non-verbally, that you understand where they're coming from, that what they're thinking, feeling, or doing makes sense, and you understand why or how they did it. That's period what it is. I get it. It makes sense. How or why you did it. It doesn't mean that I'm providing approval, permission, or praise, because that's different. And I've had people say to me before, like, oh, I validate my kid or my students all the time. I tell them I'm proud of them. I know they're working hard. They're doing a great job. That all is praise. And praise, I will tell you, is really effective at reinforcing some people. And for sometimes, praise for others, like if they get overt praise and people see attention coming to them, they shut down. They don't want that overt attention. And so you always want to make sure, if you're providing praise to somebody, watch how they react to it. Does it encourage them to keep doing more, or does it shut them down and they do less? Because praise might not be effective for them. And then just highlighting again that if I can validate, I can understand why you did something or why you're feeling what you're feeling. And it doesn't mean that I agree with it or I approve of it. Secondly, what do we validate? And when I say what do we validate, it's really important to recognize that you can validate somebody's emotions, someone's thoughts, and or someone's behaviors. And you can do this for yourself and others. So we teach our students how they can validate themselves. You all how to validate your students, but also how you can validate yourself. And every time you out loud verbally validate, whether it's yourself or one of your students, you are modeling validation for them. And that's the thing that's really important, that we want to make sure we're constantly modeling for them. So what do I validate? And what do I not validate? I always say you have to validate the valid and don't validate the invalid. And they're like, Liz, that's a whole lot of confusing words. What do you mean? Here's the thing. I say when in doubt, go for the emotion. You can always validate someone's emotion without validating their problem behaviors or thoughts. So let me give you an example. I am deathly afraid of snakes. I am most afraid of garter snakes. They're the snakes that scare me the most. And I have these beliefs and fears about snakes because my brother used to chase me with them when I was a kid. I was always, they'd be like in my yard and then they'd scare me and I'd scream and they'd come out of nowhere. And then my mom, because of her background and culture, like I remember her saying as a kid, like if you kill a snake or a snake dies in your yard, then its family's gonna come and like live in your yard and try to get into your house and your pipes, and you never know where a snake's gonna show up. So I've always been scared of them. Even now, just even thinking about it, like my feet are getting a little tingly, super scared of them. Now let me ask you, is my fear of garter snakes valid? I can't see what your reactions are, and I'm going to say that most of you are being like, yeah, it is. Absolutely. Yeah, it makes sense that I'm scared of garter snakes if I think they're going to kill me, attack me, hurt me, get into my home, right? All that makes sense. Are my thoughts about garter snakes valid? No. Garter snakes aren't dangerous to humans, so they're not valid. And my behavior of jumping on furniture, screaming, trying to run away, they're more scared of me than I am. They're more scared of me than I am of them. So I probably don't need to run away. So my behavior is not valid either. All right. So my emotion, my fear can be valid without my thoughts or behaviors being valid. So you want to pay attention to that when you're thinking about what do I validate with my student. But here's the thing. If I go to Eastern Washington, it's about 2 hours east of Seattle, where it's more desert-like and lots more mountains and canyons, and I decide I want to go hiking there. If I go hiking, then we have rattlesnakes in those canyons. Is my fear of rattlesnakes valid? They're dangerous and can kill me. Are my thoughts about rattlesnakes valid? Yep, they are true. And my behavior of running away and avoiding them valid? Absolutely. So I want you to recognize, like, you can validate one without the other, or you can validate all three, and just kind of always fueling that. So how do you validate? What do you validate? Emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. And when in doubt, validate the emotion. So how do we validate? All right. I've kind of tried to break some of this down into like basic ideas and simple pieces here for you. And you'll be provided with like a 1-page handout on it. So you're going to get a like short 3-page handout on that biosocial theory, and you're going to get a 1-page 4 steps to validation on what you can do here. So step 1, validation. Sounds simple, right? And not always simple is pay attention, which means make eye contact. Shift your attention to the person you're engaging with and talking to when they're there. There's a big difference between somebody being like, hey, what's up? What's going on? What do you need? Versus stopping what you're doing over here, whether it's on your cell phone or on your computer, shifting and turning your attention and making eye contact and talking to the person. That is the lowest level of validation. and it's incredibly important, right? If our kids are living and existing in like chaotic households or in the school, or they're coming, from work that day to coming to school at night, and it's all chaotic, people might not be taking the time to stop, look at them, right? Validate the importance of their existence and presence with you, right? This is where really making eye contact is different. And I will tell you, this is the lowest level of validation and an incredibly important one. Head nods. Here's what I want you to think about head nods. And coming back to this idea of validate what's valid and not the invalid, is when somebody's talking to me, I often do this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. Okay. Right? I call this my bobblehead, right? Because I learned in graduate school how to have a bobblehead by doing this a lot. The problem with always having a bobblehead when you're talking to somebody is you might be potentially inadvertently validating the invalid, reinforcing something, or trying to validate something that's not valid. Have you ever been in a conversation with a student, maybe, either you're teaching a class or it's one-on-one, and you are talking with a student or they're participating, and you are on like topic A, and you're trying to talk about topic A, and all of a sudden the student starts going off on this tangent, and now they're on like topic letter S. They're all the way over here, and you want to get them back to topic A. And while they're talking, you're like, you're physically doing this. All right. But in your mind, you're thinking, how do I bring them back? How do I bring them back? We got to get them all the way back over here. We are so off task right now. Has that ever happened to anybody? And imagine it has happened for some of you. And when that's happening, when you're inadvertently, like unconsciously doing this, you are validating the invalid. You want to bring them back. So pay attention to my head nods. Do I have an uncontrollable bobblehead right now? Am I giving that attention to the invalid? So sometimes you might have to turn your head away or just stop with the bobblehead if you don't want to validate the invalid. Okay? Hope that makes sense. That's clear. All right. So first step, low-level validation. Pay attention. Turn, make eye contact, and head nods. You can see the difference between these two pictures here. Validation step 2. Listen and reflect, right? What emotion is the other person feeling? Can you identify it, right? And how does it make sense given what they're thinking, feeling, or the situation? And now restate that, what the other person said, in their own words, right? Not in your own words, not their words, right? Going back to that. But listen, what emotion are they feeling? How does it make sense? And how do you restate it in your own words? And sometimes we use phrases like, oh, what I hear you saying, it sounds like, all right, that must have been really difficult. All those are fine. Reflecting back what you heard them say in your own words. That's what I want you to pay attention to there. And then this is those first step 1 and step 2. That's what most of us learn and know how to do. That's what you kind of see out in the world about how do you validate, show empathy to somebody. Let's go to the next step, step 3. This is where we're going to take it up a big notch and talk about how do we validate through both accepting and acknowledging why it makes sense to the person. And this means that we can validate the person on their emotions or behaviors based on first their history or biology. This means like based on things that have happened in the past for them, right? Like I say, like the example of like for some of my high school students who are moving from middle to high school, and all of a sudden they've gone from like 42-minute, 45-minute classes, and now they're in block scheduling, right, of 90-minute classes. And I can say totally makes sense to me. Like for somebody who has ADHD, sitting in a 90-minute class lecture is really difficult for you, right? Or I may be able to validate them based on their neurodiversity, right? of, it's really hard for you to make connections with people and build relationships when you only see people for so many hours a day and you don't interact with them outside of school, right? Or based on your trauma history, loud noises really set you off. And when the bell rings, that can be really difficult. So I can really validate, like, this makes sense, what you're thinking, feeling, or doing based on your history or based on how you're biologically hardwired. Right? Somebody can say, like, Liz, it totally makes sense that, like, you walk around with tissues all the time because, like, you are biologically hardwired as, like, somebody's just more emotionally sensitive and reactive. That's what you do, right? Or it makes sense given that your brother used to chase you with snakes and throw them at you, and especially like snake skins, why you're so scared of them now. We can validate based on that. And then the next level of type of validation or step in it, can you validate the person based on the current situation, the current context, how this makes sense that you are feeling, thinking, or doing right now, because that's a typical reaction. Most people would have that similar reaction in your situation, right? Most people would be scared and kind of get that jump scream if somebody was chasing them with a snake, whether it was a garter snake or a rattlesnake. Being chased by a snake is probably scary for a lot of people. Others people would feel that too. Or, yeah, lots of freshmen in high school making the transition to block scheduling struggle with 90-minute classes. So what I want you to see the difference between those two is one piece of that validation is based on your history, how you're biologically hardwired, past experiences, right? Versus this is how a lot of people feel in this situation. Most people would have that kind of response. And the reason why that current situation one is in there, and it's really important, is that if you remember I said earlier, one of the problems with an invalidation, repeated invalidation by the environment, is that it leads to self-invalidation, and it teaches the person how to not trust themselves. And if they don't trust themselves and they start looking out to the world to, like, what should I be thinking, feeling, or doing, when we can validate them based on current situation, this is a typical reaction. What you're feeling makes sense because that's how a lot of people would feel in this scenario, right? That's teaching them that they can trust their own internal experience, right? And all these types of validation, when somebody is feeling emotionally dysregulated, their prefrontal cortex is offline, these are all steps to helping get that prefrontal cortex online. We're not trying to problem solve and push for change and figure out what caused them to be so upset. We're just trying to validate and understand. So that's step 3. The fourth step and final step in validation is to be real. And this sounds silly, but it really is to kind of be present, be real, be genuine with your students, right? Treating them as human beings. So I always put this picture up for it because I feel like the Royals are really great examples of people who never look genuine and real. Like, they walk around the world like this, like, here I am, perfectly put together in my blue coat with my matching blue hat, and everything is just like, my smile is exactly how it's supposed to be. You rarely see them with these, like, natural, genuine faces. Just out in the world, it all seems kind of staged in their lives. And when it comes to teenagers, high school students, young adults, they are the best at recognizing when somebody's being what we refer to as a try-hard, where you're trying to be cool, you're trying to connect in a way that's not genuine or real to you. And kind of coming up and being present and engaging with somebody. If a student starts telling you a really sad story about their lives, about something they saw, right? And, you're allowed to have some emotional reaction to that. You're allowed to tear up with them. I don't want you, like, starting to, like, bawl and cry and now they're taking care of you, but showing, like, human response and interaction is a high level of validation, right? That's also modeling for them, like, oh, you were feeling that, I'm feeling something even similar, just hearing your story. That's part of that step 3 validation on current context and connecting with them. I can treat you and share in the genuine experience you're having. And so that's another big way to validate them. And so as we bring this through, I really want you to be able to think about all these types of validation with our students and walk through it. But those are the 4 steps, and I know I'm coming up on my time here, that I really want you to think about. And like I said, I gave you a little bit of a handout. Actually, if I stop sharing my screen, I think I can show you what this handout looks like. I'm going to present something else here. Where is it? Not NPS. Here, I think I can go there and then share this screen with you. And this is just kind of, let me see if this is going to work. Oh, hold on a second. Nope. There it is. Oh, here it is. Okay. Can you all see that now? All right. Yep, you can see that. So yeah. This is where, yep, this is a page I just put together for you that you can have just kind of like, how do I validate? What do I say to someone as we go through this? Taylor, do we have time to do a little practice exercise? Is that even possible with where people are in our setups?
Yeah, you can build that in for a few minutes.
I can. Okay. So I want everybody just kind of thinking about this validation and the key that happens here. And then I'm going to go back to my slide. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute, and just so you can all see me here. And let me see if I am in the right spot on my slides here. Okay. Actually, before I do that, I want to show you a little video here because I think this will actually be more helpful to you all. I am in this. Nope. Sorry, this is me again trying to figure out. Let's do this before I do an exercise and see if we have time. This may be more helpful. I imagine many of you have seen the movie Inside Out. Here's what I want you to pay attention. I'm going to show you this little video, and I want you to pay attention to when you see validation versus invalidation between the characters in this scene. And what I want you to specifically pay attention to is the impact and the difference between invalidation on Bing Bong, the purple elephant's emotions, versus when he gets validated, what that helps him do. Because the number one thing I pay attention to, and I want you all to pay attention to, is when you're interacting with a student or anybody in your life, and they're expressing emotion, and maybe big emotion, and you're interacting with them and trying to help them re-regulate, that if you notice that their emotion continues to increase in intensity, or they completely shut down and stop engaging, that is a cue, a sign to you that you are either invalidating them or not validating them at all. Right? So you're either not validating or you're invalidating. And that is the cue that I have to switch and start validating them. And so pay attention in this video for a few minutes. What happens when validation shows up?
Oh, the stuffed animal hall
Hear
of
that?
fame! My rocket! Wait, Riley and I were still using that rocket. It still has some song power left. Who's your friend who likes to play? No, you can't take my rocket to the top. Riley and I are going to the moon. Riley can't be done with me.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip planned for us.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone. Forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all I had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great adventures.
Oh, they were wonderful. Once we flew back in time. We had breakfast twice that day.
Sadness.
It sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah, it's sad.
I'm okay now. Come on. The train station is this way.
How did you do that?
I don't know. He was sad, so I listened to what...
Hey! There's the train!
Oh, we made it! We're finally gonna get home! Oh no, these facts and opinions look so similar.
Ah, don't worry about it. Happens all the time.
All right. So can you see where validation happens? Where invalidation shut down in that scenario? Does that make sense? All right. I'm hoping you were able to see that, experience it, recognize the difference that when we invalidate, we shut down problem solving, and we can be exacerbating the emotion that somebody might be stuck in. So validation is the key from us to getting that prefrontal cortex back online. I think, Taylor, maybe I'll stop there because I know I've gone over, and I think you all have, I don't know if there's time for questions, if any questions came up from folks or any questions that the leadership has.
Let me just give you guys 1 minute. If you've got a question, please feel free to type it on the document. If there's no questions, in a couple minutes, we will wrap it up. I do see some mouses clicking around on our document, so that's a good sign that people can access it.
Nice. See, Paige has got something coming in. Let's see. Oh, no questions. Oh, I'm glad you love the video. I love this video, even though we've seen it so many times. It really, as Paige is saying, it really shows how the importance of validation. You know, what I really want you all to think about and take home from this is that validation goes beyond just, you know, reflecting back what the other person's saying. It's paying attention, head nods, eye contact, full attention, and it's really saying how this makes sense given your thoughts, feelings, your history, the current situation, and how being real with our students is such a critical part of that validation as well.
Dr. Liz, we thank you again so much for sharing with us tonight and your expertise. And thank you so much for all that you've done to support mountain education in our programs over the last several years. And obviously, we're looking forward to some more time together with you as the year progresses. And Mountain Ed staff, I just want to remind you the incredible group of educators that you are and the huge difference that you make in our students' lives on a regular basis. And I know that's going to continue again this year. And I hope that you gain some valuable insight tonight that you'll be able to use immediately with all of your students, but especially those that present more challenges than others. I see our teachers sitting down and using some of the validation skills that they've learned tonight, and our mentors and all of our student support staff, administrators, and everyone. Just thank you so much for that tonight, and we greatly appreciate it. Principals, we're going to turn it over to you now. Please remember to review the CRAS handout, and of course, any other activities or things that you have planned for your staff. Again, looking forward to a great year. We'll close things out here, and thanks everyone for your time tonight. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. I'll see you next time.